Hello, and welcome to Running the Table, the podcast where we run through everything on the table in the world of sports. And today we're going to take a little bit of a different route than we normally do and cover a sport that we've never covered here on the podcast. The NBA Finals is upon us. So we're going to give you a preview and cover the whole series throughout as the Golden State Warriors are taking on the Boston Celtics. It should be a fun series. Tim, you ready to jump right into it?
No, happy to be back after a short little hiatus there. So let's run it.
Let's do it. So the Overlook, we got a dynasty reborn versus one of the most historic franchises in the NBA finally achieving playoff success. The Golden State Warriors, they finished this season 53-29, which was good for the third seed in the West. They went through the Denver Nuggets, won that series in 5. The Grizzlies won that in 6. And the Mavericks in the Western Conference Finals won that in 5. On their way to their 6th NBA Finals in the last 8 years and their first NBA Finals since 2019. Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, Andrew Wiggins, and Draymond Green lead the charge for this Warriors squad. And they're going to be ready. This new rendition of the Dubs are going to look to capture their NBA title. And on the other side, you have the Boston Celtics, who finished 51-31, which was good for the second seed in the East. And they completed their revenge tour, so to speak, getting by the Brooklyn Nets in a sweep, the Milwaukee Bucks and the Miami Heat, both in grueling 7-game series. But they lost to each of those 3 teams in the playoffs in the last 3 years, and led by Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Al Horford, Marcus Smart, they finally reached the finals after all these years. So when it comes to these two teams, Tim, what stands out to you about each of them?
You look at the Warriors, and the Warriors obviously have the playoff history, at least recently. You talk about the dynasty reborn, you've got like that main group of guys with Steph, Klay, and Draymond finally making it back after a couple of rough years there. But you've got the addition of quite a few young guys there that have made this team a very interesting sort of tweak of the success that they had when they had that dynasty during the mid to late 2010s. And I think what's the most interesting thing for me is both teams, but especially the Warriors, because I think it's a little bit newer for the Warriors, is the defensive aspects of this matchup. You've got 2 of the best defensive teams statistically in the NBA.
The top
here.
2 most defensively efficient teams in the NBA, 1 and 2.
Yeah, which the Warriors have always been known for their ability to score the ball with guys like shooters like Steph and Klay. But their defense was really helped them gain that edge in sort of recreating some of that magic. And I think the big thing that's going to be interesting for me is the individual matchups, with especially the way that the Warriors are going to have to guard the Celtics. Because one thing that's classic about the Warriors, they don't run a traditional center, with them running Draymond at the 5 a lot. And with the Celtics, that'll be pushing Draymond up against Al Horford, who by all means isn't necessarily a traditional center in that aspect either, but that will pose an interesting matchup of how the Celtics attempt to use Horford to try to expose that sort of potential mismatch there with Draymond Green. Then, of course, you have the age-old issue of who and how are you going to guard Jason Tatum?
How are you going to stop Jason Tatum?
Because he's proven to be quite a force. Even when he has relatively poor games, which if for anyone who did watch Game 7 of the conference finals between the Celtics and Heat, didn't really feel he had the best game. He didn't shoot the ball that well, still dropped 26 points though.
But
still led him to
found
victory.
A way to get it done.
Yes.
And I think the interesting thing about that is you talk about Draymond guarding Al Horford down low, and even Robert Williams III, who's going to take up that center spot for the Boston Celtics. That leaves who to guard Tatum. And I think that assignment will most likely go to Andrew Wiggins.
Yeah,
but
most likely.
Yeah, which is really interesting. Will Wiggins be able to step up to Jason Tatum, who time and time again in these playoff series has found a way to get it done. He was the inaugural winner of the Larry Bird Trophy, which I think is really cool, by the way. The Magic Johnson and Larry Bird trophies for the Eastern and Western Conference Finals MVP, really like that. But Jason Tatum, the winner of that award in the East, he's found a way to get it done, and who's going to stop him? And if it's not Wiggins, I think the next assignment goes to Draymond Green, and you throw Kevon Looney in there as the traditional
Most likely.
five. But it's definitely going to be an interesting matchup. But I actually want to flip it to another aspect of the Warriors, and that will be the health of their bench depth. Because you ask, like, who's going to guard Jason Tatum? A very big name that is questionable for the finals is Gary Payton II, who
I really hope he's able to come back, because it sucked how he ended up getting knocked out of the playoffs. And he is a very big piece, especially on the defensive side of things, for that Warriors team. And he could prove to be a very vital resource for them going into this finals if he's able to come back healthy.
And some other names that could return. Otto Porter Jr. has been pretty big for them. And Andre Iguodala, who's in his old age, is
Max Kellerman's favorite.
Yep, is back for another finals run. And even if Andre Iguodala isn't 100% healthy, his presence off the court is still really, really huge for the Warriors. So I think the health of those guys is going to be very telling in a season where the Warriors haven't really been completely healthy all the way.
They've been damaged goods for a good point of the year, and they found ways to adjust. And I think a big part of that, you talk about their bench depth, is a lot of those guys have found themselves in bigger roles at different parts of the year, and they've maintained a lot of fluidity in having to put guys in and then having them phase back out when other guys get back to being healthy. But I think the Warriors have done a very good job at making sure that everybody knows their role at any given time, and those guys have really stepped up into those roles. So if they're able to get everybody back and healthy, where you have that not only full roster in terms of your overall talent, but also the options that you could go to at any given time during game, whether you need to go to a more defensive lineup, a bigger lineup, or a smaller lineup. Having those options is going to be huge for them, because I think that's what makes them one of the hardest teams to guard in the NBA, is because they have so many different types of lineups and different ways that they can attack you.
Yeah, the Warriors, it's going to be very interesting to see how they play the Celtics defensively, and their bench health. That's going to be crucial too. So now I want to flip the script and talk about the Boston Celtics. And the main aspect that I want to look at with them is rest and playoff fatigue, because they're coming off back-to-back 7-game series against the defending champion Milwaukee Bucks and the Miami Heat, who have also had experience with deep runs in the playoffs in the past. And those games matter. Those games add up, and playoff fatigue is very real. So they could be possibly running on fumes if forced into another long series against the Warriors. How much do they have left in the tank? I understand this Boston Celtics team is gritty, they're grimy, they're scrappy. They embody what the city of Boston really wants to be, and that's awesome to watch. But the tank
is tough to sustain.
It's tough to sustain. And how long is it going to last?
7-game series,
yeah, big question marks for me.
Yeah, I mean, it's very tough, because you talk about, I mean, obviously they cruised through the first round with the sweep, but then back-to-back 7-game series going into the finals, it's definitely not going to be easy.
Yeah, let's also take a look at the matchups. Milwaukee Bucks, Miami Heat, 2 tough teams.
Yeah, it really does take it takes a toll on you as a team and as individual players. And I think it's one of the biggest keys for this series is just how much is the team okay with, and Jason Tatum himself okay with having him take over at times.
Of course.
Being that big form of offense.
Yeah, let's not sugarcoat it here.
That's one of the things that I think that they missed a lot of, or missed the opportunity of, in the last, I don't know how much you watched of the last quarter, in the fourth quarter of Game 7, how much of the time they had a substantial lead. And then down the stretch, instead of being the superstar that he is, making the plays, being a playmaker, being a shot creator, finding his shots and just taking it to him, Jason Tatum often found himself essentially drawing some attention and then kicking off to somebody else. And you had a lot of guys miss shots down the stretch, which allowed the Heat to get back in it. I think Tatum's going to need to be a bit more of a takeover player in some of these tighter games, these tougher situations. Prove that he can be that true force to be reckoned with, that everybody knows he can be when he wants to be.
And let's not sugarcoat it. He's been that so far. He has willed his team to playoff victories and this finals appearance, period. So we're not saying that Jason Tatum isn't that
He certainly
guy.
hasn't been hiding himself at all, but
he clearly is that guy. He's clearly been the leader that a very skilled Boston Celtics team needed him to be. And the Boston Celtics, this is a very well-deserved finals appearance. They deserve to be here. Both teams deserve to be here.
It's been a long time coming for the Celtics.
Point that we're trying to make, though, is what we've seen in the Eastern Conference Finals, especially in Game 7 down the stretch, that fatigue is very real, and how much can it affect this Boston Celtics team. So, Tim, now that we've covered both the Warriors and the Celtics, let's give our finals prediction. We'll start with you. Who you got winning the NBA Finals this season?
So, I mean, this one is definitely going to be interesting. We've talked about all the matchups and how things are going to be very interesting for what both teams bring to the table. I personally think the Celtics are going to be able to disrupt the Warriors at times and throw them off their game.
No doubt.
They've got balanced scoring options between Tatum, Brown, Marcus Smart, Al Horford, and other guys, and that's going to win them some games, no doubt about that. But with that being said, we talked about the rest. We talked about the playoff experience of these guys, and the depth of this Warriors team with the added experience that they have does speak volumes. And I think for that reason that the Warriors are going to have a bit of an edge in this one. So I actually have the Warriors in 7. I actually do believe that this is going to be a grinded out series, and it goes all the way out to the 7th game. I'm not sure if I necessarily see that, like, in all 7 games that the home team wins each time. I could definitely see each team potentially stealing a game away throughout the series. But I do think that the Celtics are going to be able to hold their own to win enough games to force it to go to 7. But I think in the end, especially with the last game being in the Bay Area, that the Warriors are going to be able to grind this one out.
Yeah, and you mentioned that home court advantage and how nice it'll be for the Warriors to have a week of rest. And I think it's 11 days at home, sleeping in their own bed. They're going to be ready to go. And this honestly feels like a finals of opposites to me. And what I mean by that is you look at the Warriors. I just talked about how well rested they're going to be. We've gone through how more experienced they are. Their 6th finals appearance in the last 8 years. I think they have like 120 some odd games of finals experience, and they carry that home court advantage. The Celtics, grueling back-to-back 7-game series, and not one player on this Boston Celtics roster has even made an appearance in the NBA Finals. This Celtics team, I agree, they're going to be able to win a few games, but I think this team of destiny falls to the Warriors in 6 games, not 7. I think the Warriors are going to close it out at Boston and win it in 6.
And once again, that's perfectly possible. And when I definitely see that, I think the Warriors are definitely going to come out strong here. And I think that the Celtics will be able to respond. But you talk about the time and time again, being able to fight back when everything is on the line and it matters most. That's going to be really the tale of this series. So we'll see how it plays out. It's really setting up to be a very interesting series. And you talk about sort of the complete opposites of these two teams and how they've gotten to this finals and sort of the teams that they are, their mantras. But it's really set up to be quite a series that we're in for.
Yeah, you got 2 fascinating teams, and you said it perfectly. Nobody really knows how this series is going to play out. We gave our predictions. If you guys agree or disagree with us, let us know in the comments. But we're going to be covering this NBA Finals series all series long, we just gave our preview, and we're going to be giving recaps after each game. So stick around for that. It's great to be back after our small little break, but we can't wait to cover the rest of the NBA Finals for you and much more later on down the road. So like and subscribe for more Running the Table content, and we out. Peace.